President Trump's nominee for the Federal Reserve, Judy Shelton, was on Capitol Hill today for her confirmation hearings, and it seems she may have an uphill battle. Here to break it all down is Yahoo Finance's Brian Cheung. So what'd you think?
Well, it looks like she might be in trouble. Actually, there were 3 Republican senators who expressed a little bit of skepticism that she's actually the right candidate for one of these 2 vacancies at the Federal Reserve. And an interesting exchange between her and Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey regarding what she views as the appropriate monetary policy with regards to one specific type of thing. Let's take a look.
And it wasn't until July that our Federal Reserve decided likewise to lower a quarter point, as they did the next meeting and the next.
So I know I only have 5 minutes and we're down to 1. My question is, and I think the only rational conclusion one can come to from reading what you have written and what you've said is that you believe the Fed should actively seek to devalue our currency if other countries are doing that. And I think that's a very, very dangerous path to go down.
What he was talking about was the suggestion from Judy Shelton in previous writings that the Federal Reserve should be lowering rates for the purposes of weakening the U.S. dollar to make it easier for those abroad to buy U.S. exports, something that sounds very familiar. Yes. That's what President Trump wanted from the Federal Reserve last year. So she said later on in her hearing that she remains independent, that her policy decisions will not be influenced by anyone. A lot of people have had skepticism about her ties to President Trump because she was actually an economic advisor for his transition team. But interesting to see, she actually backtracked on her gold standard stance. She said, quote, it's actually, she would not advocate for going back to a prior historical monetary arrangement. She was hammered on her thoughts on the Bretton Woods system. It was a bit of a rocky hearing, but again, I mean, not all Republicans are on board.
Let me ask you, were there any objections that she's from the same district as somebody else? In other words, you're not supposed to have 2 people from the same Federal Reserve district, and that goes back to the 30s. The reason the FOMC was created in the first place in 1933 was because New York held a stranglehold on control on monetary policy, and now it looks like it's shifted to D.C.
This is a very technical thing, but basically among the Fed governors, including the chair, they cannot be from the same Federal Reserve districts. They carve up geographically the Federal Reserve into 12 districts. They don't want 2 from one district because it would overrepresent one region of the country. She technically lives in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which would be covered by the Richmond Fed. Someone already represents that. That's Lael Brainerd. So they just basically changed it around, even though she lives in Virginia, because she went to school, Judy Shelton she went to school in California. So they say that she's from the 12th district. So they kind of rejiggered it. Technically, they did the same with Jerome Powell.
Right. He represents Philadelphia, but he lives in
Maryland.
Yeah.
So,
but that's covered in the Richmond district.
It's a really weird situation.
I guess since he went to Princeton, it counts because
in New Jersey.
Right.
He's in New Jersey. He's a New Jersey guy like us.
Okay, but that's the part of New Jersey covered by the Philly Fed, not the part of New Jersey covered by
the New York
Fed. Of course, this leads to the conversation of shouldn't we change the Fed districts because the San Francisco Fed
is the entire West Coast.
It's you have all of this.
Yeah. Right.
Everything that Lewis and Clark got to.
Meanwhile,
to San Francisco.
Missouri
has 2.
So there's that. I guess more broadly, though, thinking about the Shelton nomination and I think as we break it down, like her close ties with the president, in my mind, are not that big of a deal, if only because you assume that a president is going to appoint people to appointable positions that generally align with their views. But the fact that Judy Shelton spent most of her career advocating for the gold standard and now claims that she doesn't want to go back to that, to me, is by far the most problematic part of all of this.
Right.
She thinks the actual system of financing and the banking system in the U.S. is bad and wrong and should be reversed. And it doesn't matter that she likes President Trump. That's fine. Yeah. It's that she spent her entire career advocating against the system the Fed is meant to protect.
And we don't even need to go into the nitty-gritty of the gold standard because I don't think we have the time to do that right now. But you could even look at interest rate policy. She has published works over many decades, and during the Obama administration, she was hammering the Fed for having rates at 0 or low 0.
So
but
were
then
all these guys, though.
Right, so she was
Trump,
saying we need to raise rates, and then all of a sudden, once her name was in the mix, before she was even formally announced as the pick by President Trump in a tweet in July, she actually did an interview with the Washington Post where she said, actually, I think rates should be at 0 right now, and if I were nominated to the Fed, I would bring them down as fast as possible. So that was a point of contention.
It's not surprising.
I don't even have a problem with the rates thing, though. Like, we've seen people come and
the
go
gold
who've changed their
standard.
view on rates.
Yeah.
It's the
But
gold.
it's the timing. It's the timing of that change.
Every hawk became a dove when Trump became president. That's well
Same
documented.
thing has happened with Stephen Moore.
I mean, all these
but
clowns did the same thing. The
Stephen
point is,
Moore, Herman Cain.
Right,
Why
whatever.
is it so hard for the president to get a Fed nominee?
I think it's because the individuals
Well,
that
you
he's
pick Jay Powell, you get confirmed. You pick
Right.
Judy Shelton, you know.
This is the thing. I mean, I've been talking to those inside the circle
Yes.
because keep in mind, President Trump, if Judy Shelton does go through, actually Chris Waller, who by the way everyone forgot about,
Yeah.
he looks poised
He's
to
going to go
make.
through,
Yeah,
so it's
I mean
fine.
those that I've been talking to in DC say he's pretty much a sure shot. Judy Shelton, not so sure. If she doesn't make it, that'd be the 5th nominee that he doesn't get through. But he did get a number of Fed governors through. People forget that Randy Quarles and Rich Clarida, Mickey Bowman, they were all Trump appointees. People that I talked to down in DC say that the White House was not really interested from President Trump's level in those nominees. It was staffers that were part of the legacy Senate Banking Committee under the Republicans that kind of drove that. And then President Trump, once Larry Kudlow became part of the picture, was like, okay, let's try to get some of my friends on board. Which
Do we have 10
Senate
minutes
has
to
not
talk
responded
about
to.
the repo market?
Maybe, did you see this?
They shrunk it a little bit today. Yep.
It did big. I mean,
markets blinked. They
Some
did.
people
down.
are saying that's why stocks are down right
Dow's
now.
now down 100 points.
Well, correlation, not causation.
Well,
but
I-
What
look
else
at the
has
tape.
happened in the
Did-
last
no,
hour?
He's right. The tape went negative in a big way. There was program selling on that. Didn't really affect the price that much, but it did trigger an algo sell-off. I don't think it's going to last because operationally there's still plenty in the overnight facilities, I think, to accommodate demand. But yeah, the term repos have been oversubscribed recently. They're cutting this, so it's going to get some play overnight. Big picture, I don't think it matters.
And if I could just add quickly, I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise to markets. Chairman Powell was saying that they've already started to
April's
taper
gonna be a
those
whole
daily
thing,
repo
yeah.
operations.
Yeah.
Not the same thing as the T-bill purchases, not the same thing as whatever else they're trying to do with Tomo. But if you look at the snapshot each week released on Wednesday of the Fed balance sheet, it has been ticking down. January 1st, $255 billion of repo agreements on the sheet. You look at the most recent number, February 5th, $170 billion. So it's been decreasing. This should not be a surprise to markets.
Tesla shares above 800, so
Oh my
fourth
gosh.
mandate,
Are you going to overlay those two charts?
fourth
Yes.
mandate is still accomplished here.
So much Fed news. Brian Cheung, we're lucky to have you here. Have a nice evening.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.